Chapter 1. The Beginning of the Cracks. The hum of the microwave was the only sound in the kitchen as I set 2 plates on the table. The chicken parm smelled decent enough. Frozen meal, not homemade, but it was the best I could manage after a 12-hour shift. I glanced at the clock. 7:42 p.m. Amber was late. Again. I sat down, checked my phone. No message. I scrolled through my notifications, tried to ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut. Lately, that feeling had been my constant companion. Finally, the front door clicked open. "Hey," Amber called, voice a little too bright. Her heels clacked across the hardwood. I could smell her perfume, a stronger, muskier scent than usual. "Hey," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Dinner's ready." She walked in, phone in hand, fingers flying across the screen. She barely looked up. "Sorry, work stuff. Got caught up." I nodded. "No problem." We sat, the silence between us stretched thin and brittle. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She wore more makeup than usual, smoky eyeshadow, dark red lipstick, and the dress, tight, low cut, not exactly office wear. "You have a late meeting?" I asked carefully. She blinked, as if surprised I noticed. "Yeah, client dinner. Big account. I wanted to ask which client. Who was there?" But the words caught in my throat. I hated sounding paranoid. Instead, I picked up my fork and started eating. Amber barely touched her food, her fingers drumming on the table beside her phone. The screen lit up once, twice. She flipped it over, face down. Another pang in my gut. We used to talk at dinner. About our days, our plans, dumb little things. Lately, these meals felt like sitting across from a stranger. "Everything okay?" I finally asked. She looked up, eyes guarded. "Yeah, just tired." I forced a smile. "Me too. Long day at the shop." She nodded, then stood abruptly. "I'm gonna shower." I watched her walk away, heels clicking up the stairs. The scent of her perfume lingered. I stared down at my half-eaten meal, appetite gone. It hadn't always been like this. A year ago, Amber and I were solid. Married 9 years. We'd scrimped and saved to buy this house in the suburbs. I ran a small auto shop downtown. Amber worked in marketing. We were a team. At least I thought we were. The changes started small. New clothes, new perfume. More late nights. Less sex. Months had gone by now. Her phone suddenly had a new passcode. When I asked, she said, "Work stuff. Privacy." I wanted to believe her. I tried. But the laughter, the way she smiled at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, the distance in her eyes, it all added up to something I didn't want to face. And then there was Nick, my younger brother, 29, flashy, cocky as hell. The type of guy who always found a shortcut while I worked my ass off. Nick had been coming around more lately, stopping by the house. Just visiting, he'd say, smirking. Amber laughed a little too hard at his dumb jokes. They'd share these glances, quick, electric. I told myself I was imagining it. Paranoia, stress. Work had been brutal, staff shortages, late nights. Still, every time Nick showed up, I felt this itch under my skin. Later that night, Amber came downstairs in her robe, damp hair falling over her shoulders. I was on the couch, nursing a beer, some mindless show flickering on the TV. She sat at the other end, scrolling on her phone. Again, face down whenever it buzzed. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said absently. More silence. "You've seemed distracted lately." She sighed. "It's just work, Jake." I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to. I set the beer down. "Amber, I know we've both been busy, but it feels like we're not connected anymore." She glanced up, eyes tired. "I don't know what you want me to say." "The truth," I said quietly. She rubbed her forehead. "Jake, I'm exhausted. Can we not do this right now?" I swallowed hard. "Okay." She stood. "I'm going to bed." I watched her walk away. Alone again. Later, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Amber slept beside me, curled away. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark. I thought about the way she'd smiled at Nick last weekend. The new password, the missed calls, the way her body stiffened when I touched her. I wanted to shake it off, to tell myself it was nothing. But deep down I knew something was cracking beneath the surface. The next day I dragged myself through work. Grease-stained hands, sore back, long hours under the hood of an old Chevy. My mind wasn't on the job. At lunch, I called Matt. "Yo, man, you sound like shit," he said. I exhaled. Things are rough at home. He paused. Still thinking something's up? Yeah, she's different. And Nick, he's been around a lot. Matt swore. Bro, that guy's a snake. I know. You need to be smart about this. Don't confront her yet. Watch. Listen. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah, you're right. But inside, anger simmered. I shouldn't have to play detective in my own marriage. That night, Nick showed up again. Hey, big bro. He grinned, swaggering in. Got any beers? Amber laughed as she greeted him, her face lighting up in a way it never did for me anymore. I watched them from the kitchen, heart thudding. Nick popped a beer, threw an arm around Amber's shoulders. She didn't pull away. My fist clenched. We're going good, Jake. Nick called over, smirking. Yeah, I said stiffly. Busy. Amber barely looked at me. Her gaze was on Nick. I left the room, unable to stomach it. Lying in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling again. The cracks were spreading, the doubts louder, and deep down, I knew something was very, very wrong. Chapter 2, Suspicion Grows. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Amber walked in late again, 10:26 p.m., according to the glowing numbers on the microwave. I was on the couch, a muted basketball game playing in the background, beer half warm in my hand. She shut the door quietly, as if trying not to wake me. I wasn't asleep. Couldn't be. Hey, I called softly. She jumped a little, clearly startled to see me still up. Hey, I didn't think you'd still be awake. I sat up, blinking hard. Had trouble falling asleep. Long night. She gave a quick nod, brushing her hair back with one manicured hand. That perfume again, strong, musky, not the light floral scent she used to wear. It clung to the air around her. Client dinner went late, she said, dropping her purse on the counter. Her phone stayed in her hand, fingers hovering over it like a lifeline. I tried to smile. Must have been one hell of a dinner. She laughed nervously. Yeah, big account. Lots of schmoozing. I studied her. Perfect makeup, hair still styled, not a single sign of a long night working. My gut twisted again. You already eat? I asked. Yeah, we ate at the restaurant. Her voice was flat, eyes darting briefly to her phone. I swallowed back the sour taste rising in my throat. Okay, I'll be up in a bit. She smiled thinly. Don't stay up too late. As she climbed the stairs, I caught myself staring at her phone, face down again. Always. The next few days followed a pattern I hated, but couldn't ignore. Amber was more distant than ever. Mornings were rushed, quick kisses on the cheek, eyes on the clock. Evenings? More late returns, more unexplained client meetings. But it wasn't just the perfume or the lateness. It was how she acted, texting constantly, always with her phone in hand. If I asked, she'd flash a quick smile. Just work. If I looked closer, she'd tilt the screen away. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe the stress of the shop, the long hours, were messing with my head. But late one night, the truth slapped me in the face. It was past midnight. I'd gone to bed early, trying to get some rest before another brutal day at the shop. But Amber hadn't come to bed. I woke to the faint sound of her voice downstairs. Curious, and more than a little suspicious, I got up quietly, padding to the top of the stairs. The glow of her phone lit the living room dimly. Her voice, soft and breathy, floated up. Not a chorus, baby. He doesn't suspect a thing. My heart slammed against my ribs. Baby, he doesn't suspect a thing. My breath caught. I gripped the banister hard enough to make my knuckles ache. I strained to hear more, but her voice dropped to a whisper. A few muffled laughs, then silence. I backed away slowly, heart racing. I climbed back into bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind in a free fall. Was I going insane? Had I really heard that? Or worse, had I been blind all this time? The next day at work, I couldn't focus. My hands trembled as I worked the wrench on a customer's busted engine. Sweat beaded my forehead, not from the heat, but from the churn in my gut. Matt noticed. Yo, man, he said, leaning against the tool chest. You look like shit. Everything cool? I shook my head. No, not really. He frowned. Want to grab a beer after shift? Yeah, I sighed. I need to talk. That night, we hit Murphy's, a dim, divey bar we'd been going to since college. The neon lights buzzed overhead. The place smelled like cheap beer and old wood. We grabbed a booth in the corner. I downed half my first beer before I said a word. Matt waited, watching me with that patient look only a true friend had. Finally, I exhaled. I think Amber's cheating on me. He blinked. Shit, you serious? I nodded, voice low. Last night, I heard her on the phone. She called someone baby. Said I didn't suspect a thing. Matt's jaw tightened. Motherfucker. I rubbed my face. I don't want to believe it. But the signs are all there, man. The late nights. The perfume. The phone. Always face down locked. She barely looks at me anymore. Matt leaned forward. Listen, Jake. You can't confront her yet. Not without proof. If you come at her swinging, she'll just lie or gaslight you. I sighed. I know, but it's killing me. Every night, I wonder where she is. Who she's with. You put a hand on my shoulder. You gotta be smart about this. Watch her. Pay attention. You'll know for sure soon enough. I nodded, though it felt like my world was already crumbling. A few days later, another blow landed. Nick. He swaggered into the shop late one afternoon, grinning like he owned the place. Yo, big bro. How's the grease monkey life? I forced a smile, wiping my hands on a rag. Busy. I couldn't help but notice new designer watch gleaming on his wrist. New leather jacket, too. Nick didn't have a steady job. Never did. He bounced from scheme to scheme, always with a new excuse. Yet here he was, dripping with money. Nice watch, I said, trying to sound casual. He smirked, glancing at it. Yeah, got a hookup. You know how it is. I clenched my teeth. Right. He chuckled and clapped me on the back. Got a jet. Tell Amber I said hi. As he left, I stood frozen, blood boiling. How the hell was he affording this stuff? Another piece of the puzzle clicked sickeningly into place. That night, lying in bed beside Amber's sleeping form, I stared into the dark. Perfume. Late nights. Secret calls. Nick's sudden wealth. My heart warred with my mind. Part of me screamed to confront her, demand answers. The other part, the terrified, desperate part, clung to hope. Maybe it wasn't what it seemed. Maybe I was wrong. But deep down, I wasn't wrong. I was just too scared to face the truth. Chapter 3, The Betrayal Unfolds. It started as a normal Friday. At least, that's what I told myself when I woke up. The sun was already filtering through the blinds when I dragged myself out of bed. Amber was gone. No note, no text. Lately, I'd stopped expecting those little signs of love, the ones that used to be there every morning. I trudged through my morning routine like a zombie. Shaved, dressed, grabbed my keys, and headed to the shop. The pit in my stomach hadn't left me all week. Not since hearing her call someone baby. Not since watching Nick flaunt that new watch. Matt's words kept echoing. Watch her. Be smart. So I did. I watched. I waited. The more I saw, the more I knew. But I needed proof. Real proof. By noon, the shop was dead. 2 canceled appointments. 1 car delayed because the parts hadn't arrived. Around 1, my phone buzzed. Matt. Yo, dude, he said. I just got called in to cover a shift. We're still on for tomorrow, though. I sighed. No worries. I hung up, staring at the empty garage. No customers. No distractions. The thought hit me like a jolt. Go home. Check. See for yourself. I didn't think. I just grabbed my jacket and keys. As I pulled into our neighborhood, my heart started pounding. Hard. Faster with every turn. I told myself I was being paranoid. That Amber wouldn't be home midday. That Nick sure as hell wouldn't be here. But then I turned onto our street. And there it was. Nick's car. Right there in my driveway. Brazen. Like he owned the damn place. My grip tightened on the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I pulled up slowly, parking a few houses down. I cut the engine and sat there, pulse racing, breath shallow. I knew. I just needed to see. I got out, moving carefully. Every step felt like dragging a stone. My mind screamed 1,000 things. Go back. Don't look. You don't want to know. But my legs kept moving. I crept around the side of the house, heart thundering in my chest. The curtains were half drawn in the living room. No sign of anyone there. I made my way to the back door, careful not to make a sound. The door was unlocked. Another pang in my gut. We always locked it. I slipped inside, holding my breath. The house was quiet, eerily so. Then I heard it. A faint creak. Voices. Laughter. Upstairs. My mouth went dry. I moved like a shadow, each footstep agonizingly slow. My heart wasn't just pounding anymore. It was a sledgehammer in my chest. Halfway up the stairs, the words became clearer. Amber's voice. Light, breathless. I missed you, she whispered, followed by a low chuckle. Nick's voice, arrogant, smug. Told you I'd make time for you, babe. I stopped, frozen on the stairwell. My stomach turned violently. Another laugh. Then the unmistakable sound of lips meeting. I forced myself up the last few steps, one by one. The hallway stretched before me like a tunnel. Their voices led me straight to our bedroom. The door was half open. I reached out, hands trembling. I pushed it just enough to see, and there they were. Amber, my wife, in my brother's arms. Her bare back to me, her head tucked under his chin. Nick's hands roamed her body with sickening familiarity. She whispered against his neck, clear as day. I love you. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The woman I'd loved, sacrificed for, built a life with wrapped around my own brother. Under my roof. I backed away, knees weak. A sharp gasp threatened to escape, but I bit it down hard. I made it down the stairs without a sound. My hands gripped the railing to keep from collapsing. Once outside, I stumbled to my truck. I slammed the door shut and gripped the wheel like a vice, knuckles white, arms shaking. I love you. The words echoed, burned into my skull. I sat there for what felt like hours, eyes fixed on the windshield, breath coming in ragged gasps. Then the rage hit, a wildfire through my veins. How long? How many lies? Right here, in my house, in our bed, laughing behind my back. And Nick, my own blood, my brother. I drove. I didn't know where. Just needed to move. To keep from doing something I couldn't take back. I ended up at the corner liquor store, grabbing a bottle of Jack like a man possessed. Back home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sank onto the couch, bottle in hand, pouring shot after shot into a glass. Each burned down my throat, dulled the edges of the pain. But it never really went away. I sat there in the dark, the weight of betrayal crushing me. Memories swirled, our wedding day, the first night in this house. Lazy Sunday mornings tangled in each other. All eyes, all gone. At some point, I spoke aloud. My voice was hoarse, broken. My own brother, my wife, under my roof. Chapter 4, The Family's Reaction. The bottle was still half full when the sun crept through the blinds the next morning. My head throbbed, stomach sour, mouth dry as sandpaper. But the memories were sharp. Too sharp. I love you. My own brother, my wife, under my roof. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding with every passing second. There was no denying it anymore. No more lies I could tell myself. I had to confront them. My family had to know. I grabbed my phone and called my parents' house. My father picked up on the third ring. Yeah. Dad, it's Jake, I croaked. I need to talk. It's important. A pause. Then a sigh. Come over if you must. He hung up before I could say another word. I drove through town in a daze. Every street, every building, every familiar sight felt foreign now. Like I was walking through someone else's life. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, my chest was tight with anxiety. The old colonial-style house looked the same as always. Perfect lawn, clean windows, a place built on appearances. I stepped inside. The scent of polished wood and my mother's lavender air freshener assaulted me. Dad sat in his leather chair in the living room, newspaper in hand. His silver hair was slicked back, expression stern as ever. Mom bustled in from the kitchen, apron on. She looked surprised to see me. Jake, what's wrong? You look pale. I didn't bother with small talk. Where's Nick? Dad lowered the paper with a sharp glance. Not here. Out with Amber. The name hit me like a hammer. Of course. Out with Amber. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. I clenched my fists. Dad, I need to talk to you. About them. He sighed heavily, setting the paper aside. This again? Sit down. I remained standing, voice trembling. I came home early yesterday. I saw them. Together. In my house. In my bedroom. Dad didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. So, he said flatly. So, my voice cracked. My brother is sleeping with my wife. And you act like it's nothing. He exhaled through his nose, the way he always did when I annoyed him. Nick is worth more than you ever were. The words sucker punched me. What? I whispered. He's ambitious, Dad continued, as if explaining to a child. charismatic. He knows how to make things happen. You? You've wasted your life tinkering with cars and playing the martyr. I stood frozen, throat burning. All these years of trying to make him proud. And this was the truth. Mom rushed over, tears in her eyes. Please, Jake, don't do this. Don't tear the family apart. Tear it apart? I stared at her, disbelief mounting. They're the ones tearing it apart. She grabbed my arm, pleading. Amber has needs, Jake. Maybe if you'd been more attentive, things wouldn't have come to this. I yanked my arm away, heart pounding with rage and betrayal. You're blaming me? Dad stood, smoothing his shirt. It's done. Accept it. Nick and Amber are moving forward. You do well to stop acting like a wounded child. Before I could respond, the front door opened. Nick sauntered in, keys jingling, Amber on his arm. The sight nearly broke me. Amber wouldn't meet my eyes. But Nick, that bastard looked straight at me and grinned. Hey bro, he drawled. Didn't expect to see you here. I could barely speak. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. Nick smirked wider. Relax, man. She's happier now. You should move on. Something inside me snapped. I lunged forward, but Dad stepped between us, hand on my chest. Enough, he barked. You will not cause a scene in this house. I stared at my so-called family, chest heaving. My father's cold eyes. My mother's tear-streaked face. Nick's smug grin. Amber's guilty silence. I turned on my heel and stormed out, the walls closing in around me. I spent the next 2 days in a fog, barely eating, barely sleeping. I couldn't escape the images, the words, the way my own blood had stabbed me in the back. Then came the final insult. Sunday afternoon, I got a text from my mom. Family dinner tonight. Please come. For peace. I nearly threw my phone against the wall, but some stubborn part of me refused to let them break me completely. I showed up, dressed clean, head high. The dining room was already buzzing when I arrived. Dad sat at the head of the table, glass of bourbon in hand. Mom flitted about nervously. Nick and Amber sat together, laughing softly. The sight twisted my gut. I took a seat at the far end, silent. Dinner passed in a blur, forced conversation, hollow smiles. I barely touched my food. Then, Dad stood, raising his glass. Everyone, he began, voice booming. I want to make a toast. The room quieted. To Nick, he said proudly, for finding love, for embracing opportunity. Congrats, son. He turned toward Nick with a broad smile. Here's your car, son. A key fob slid across the table toward Nick. The room erupted in polite applause. Then Dad looked at me. Cold, sharp. Rent's due. $1,500 by Sunday. You're an adult now. The air left my lungs. I stared at him, barely able to form the words. Why do I pay while he gets rewarded? I managed, voice hoarse. Dad didn't blink. Because he's worth it. Chapter 5, The Quiet Exit. I didn't remember driving home that night. My hands were shaking on the wheel, my breath shallow and ragged. Dad's words, cold and final, played on a loop in my mind. Because he's worth it. Worth it. The bastard who stole my wife, who smiled as he gutted me in front of the family. He was worth it. And me? I was just the one footing the bill. By the time I stepped through my front door, something inside me had snapped clean in two. The house was silent. Nick's car wasn't in the driveway. Amber wasn't home. I stood in the middle of the living room, alone in the wreckage of the life I'd built. And for the first time in days, my mind was clear. I was done. I walked upstairs, heart steady now. Calm, almost eerily so. I pulled out a duffel bag and started packing. Not much, just what I needed. A few changes of clothes. My tools. The few photos that still mattered. One of Mom and me when I was a kid before everything changed. The rest? They could rot here, along with the lies. In the closet, I found an old notebook. Flipped it open, grabbed a pen. At first, I didn't know what to write. My hand hovered over the paper. Then the words poured out, sharp and final. You made your choice. Now live with it. I tore the page out and carried it downstairs. I slapped it onto the fridge with a magnet. The same fridge where Amber used to leave sweet notes. Grocery lists. Birthday reminders. Now it would hold the last words I'd ever give her. The sky was still dark when I loaded my truck. I took one last look at the house. Our house. The one I'd worked overtime to pay for. The one where we'd celebrated anniversaries, hosted holidays. The one where I thought I'd grow old with her. Now it felt like a tomb. I climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away. No ceremony, no tears, just the dull thrum of tires on asphalt. By sunrise, I was 2 towns over, parked in an empty lot by a gas station. I grabbed a coffee and sat in the cab of my truck, staring at my phone. It started buzzing at exactly 7:13 a.m. Amber. Her name flashed on the screen over and over. Incoming call. Decline. A text came through next. Jake, please. Come back. We need to talk. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. Another call. Another text. Jake, I'm sorry. Please, just answer. Then my mom. Jake, you can't do this to us. Pick up the phone. Another voicemail, her voice frantic, cracking with emotion. I shut the phone off, threw it back into my bag. I drove aimlessly for hours. The further I got, the lighter I felt. Like every mile peeled away another layer of pain. The rage was still there, simmering. The betrayal still burned in my gut. But beneath it all, something new was taking root. Resolve. They wouldn't know me anymore. Not my father with his contempt. Not Nick with his smug smile. Not Amber with her crocodile tears. I wasn't going to be the broken man they expected to sweep under the rug. I was done letting them hurt me. I found a cheap motel on the outskirts of a neighboring town and checked in under a name I barely recognized myself saying. The room was small, bare walls, faded curtains. But it was mine. No memories here. No ghosts. I tossed my bag on the bed and sank into the chair by the window, watching the world go by. For the first time in what felt like years, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Night fell. The phone stayed off. The world outside moved on without me. In the dark, I sat and thought. Not about what I'd lost. Not anymore. About what came next. I had nothing left to tie me to that house. That family. That past. And for the first time, that felt like freedom. I looked out at the empty street, my reflection faint in the glass. You've made your choice. Now live with it. And so would I. Chapter 6, Rebuilding and Revenge. Matt didn't ask questions when I showed up at his door before sunrise. Duffel bag slung over my shoulder and dark circles under my eyes. He just opened the door, took one look at me, and said, "Come in, man. Stay as long as you need." I dropped my bag in the corner of his living room and sat down hard on the couch. My hands were still trembling, but my mind was clear, sharp. Matt brought me a cup of coffee, sitting across from me. "How bad?" he asked softly. I stared into the cup, jaw clenched. "Worse than you think." He didn't press, just nodded and gave me space. For the next few days, I moved like a ghost. I slept on Matt's worn-out couch, living out of my bag. Showered in the mornings, went to work, came back, repeated the cycle. But with every passing hour, something inside me changed. The part of me that had been broken, shattered by betrayal, began hardening, solidifying. I wasn't going to sit and lick my wounds while they played house. If they thought they could tear me down and walk away unscathed, they were dead wrong. The first step was rebuilding myself. I threw myself into work at the shop. Long hours, greasy hands, sweat pouring down my back. The physical labor was a blessing, a way to drown the noise in my head. After shifts, I started hitting the gym with Matt. At first, I could barely lift. My body was run down, my mind a mess. But rage was a hell of a fuel source. I pushed through every rep, every set, until my muscles screamed and my lungs burned. I wasn't just building muscle. I was forging a new man, one who wouldn't be brought to his knees again. In the evenings, I sat in Matt's spare room with my laptop and a notebook, piecing together a puzzle. I wasn't stupid. Nick had always been flashy, too flashy. The expensive watch, the car, the designer clothes. And I knew my brother's paycheck didn't cover half of it. Amber's sudden coldness, the affair, it hadn't started overnight. I needed proof. A timeline. A trail of lies. I dug through old texts, emails, call logs. Found receipts. Bank statements Amber had carelessly left on our shared cloud storage. Piece by piece, the timeline came together. Their affair had started nearly 8 months ago, while I was working overtime, saving for our next vacation. While I was busy trying to be the provider. Each discovery was another knife, but I didn't flinch anymore. I documented everything. Saved files. Took screenshots. Backed it all up. I wasn't planning on begging for justice. I was preparing to take it. One night, Matt came home to find me hunched over the laptop, a grim smile on my face. "Man," he said, setting down a six-pack, "you're starting to look dangerous." I glanced up. "Good." I leaned back and stretched. "Turns out Nick's little lifestyle is built on a stack of loans and shady deals," I said. "He's behind on at least 2 payments. Probably more." Matt whistled. "You thinking of tipping someone off?" I met his eyes. "I'm thinking of burning the whole rotten house down." Over the next week, I made a few quiet phone calls. Anonymously tipped off one of Nick's creditors. Sent some paperwork to an old contact who worked in compliance at a local bank. Filed a detailed report to the authorities about certain irregularities in Nick's finances. Nothing fabricated, just the facts. It didn't take long before the ripples started. I heard through the grapevine that Nick had gotten a call from the bank, that his credit card had been frozen, that the repo guys were sniffing around. It was only the beginning. Meanwhile, Amber's texts started flooding in. "Jake, please talk to me. I made a mistake. We need to fix this. Please, I miss you." Each ping on my phone was like a pathetic little echo. I read them all, filed them away, but I never replied. She had made her choice. She could live with it. Matt noticed my silence one night as we sat drinking on his porch. "You ever gonna answer her?" I shook my head, eyes fixed on the stars. "No point. She's not sorry for what she did. Just sorry for what it cost her." He nodded slowly. "Damn right." We sat there in silence, the night air cool against our skin. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't healed. Not yet. But I wasn't broken anymore, either. I was building something new from the ashes they'd left behind. Chapter 7, The Final Blow. 6 months. It was incredible how much could change in that span of time. I had built a new life brick by brick out of the rubble they left me in. New apartment, new habits, stronger body, sharper mind. The scars were still there. Some days they ached worse than others, but I'd learned to live with them, to grow around them. Matt remained a constant presence. He called me his revenge project, half jokingly, but beneath it was real pride. "You're not the same guy who showed up on my couch," he said one night after a brutal gym session. "Not even close." "I'm not," I agreed quietly. And the man I used to be, the one who bent over backward for a father who'd never loved him, a brother who envied him, and a wife who betrayed him, was dead and buried. But the man I was now, I was the storm they never saw coming. The fallout had been slow at first. A few calls here and there. Quiet whispers. Then the crash began. One morning, I got a text from an old friend who still worked near Nick's office. "Dude, they just towed Nick's car right out of the lot." I smiled at the message. The repo had finally caught up. The car Dad had gifted Nick that night at dinner? Gone. The payments had stopped 2 months back. And that wasn't the only thing slipping through his fingers. I kept tabs quietly. Not out of spite, out of strategy. Nick's little business was unraveling fast. Shady deals exposed. Clients pulling out. Creditors circling like sharks. Dad had tried covering for him at first, but the hole was too deep. And Amber? She was the first rat off the sinking ship. Word got back to me through mutual acquaintances. She left about 3 weeks after the car disappeared. Apparently, money was her real love language. Without the fancy gifts, nights out, and promises of bigger things, Nick wasn't quite so charming. She packed her things and moved in with a friend. But I knew her. It wouldn't be long before she reached out again. And I was right. It started with a single text. "Jake, I don't even know where to begin. I'm so sorry." I stared at the screen, the old bitterness flaring in my chest. But I didn't respond. The messages kept coming. Like clockwork. I made a mistake. I thought I wanted more, but I lost everything that mattered. "Please, can we just talk?" Just once. I ignored every single one. Let her twist. Let her feel what it was like to be discarded. I'd waited 6 long months for this. The call from Dad came on a Sunday afternoon. I was watching the game with Matt, a cold beer in hand, when the phone rang. "Dad." Matt glanced at the screen. "You gonna take that?" I let it ring 3 more times before answering, voice calm. "Yeah." His voice on the other end was tight, strained. "Jake, listen. We need to talk." I said nothing, just waited. "It's your brother," he continued. Things aren't good. His accounts are frozen. The business is gone. He's drowning in debt." I took a long sip of my beer. And a pause. Then the words I never thought I'd hear from the man who once told me I was worthless. I need your help. I nearly laughed. You need my help? I said slowly. After everything, you're still family, he said stiffly, pride leaking through the desperation. We have to stick together. A deep breath on my end. I'll meet you. Once. The diner was nearly empty when I walked in. The bell over the door jingled softly. I spotted them in the back corner, Dad, gray and haggard. Nick, a shadow of the cocky bastard he used to be. Hollow eyes, slumped shoulders. And next to them, Amber. She looked thinner. Makeup couldn't hide the stress lining her face. Her hair wasn't done like before. They all looked up when I approached. I took my time, sliding into the booth across from them. Calm, collected. Dad spoke first. Jake, thank you for coming. I stared him down. Don't thank me. Just say what you need to say. He cleared his throat. Nick, he needs help. Financially. Maybe some advice. Guidance. I leaned back, arms crossed. Why me? You've always been steady, Dad said, voice strained. You're doing well now. And your brother is reaping what he sowed. I cut in coldly. And you helped him sow it. Dad's mouth snapped shut. Nick wouldn't meet my eyes. The smirk was gone. Now there was just shame and fear. Good. But the one who surprised me most was Amber. She leaned forward, eyes glassy. Jake, please, she whispered. I know I don't deserve it. I know I hurt you. But we can fix this. Please. My heart didn't even twitch. I stared at her, voice level. Unshaken. You threw it all away. Live with it. I stood, tossing a few bucks on the table for coffee I never drank. Without another word, I turned and walked out. Chapter 8. Closure and New Life. Time has a strange way of moving after everything breaks. In the beginning, it crawled. Every minute alone in that motel room felt like an hour. Every memory of Amber and Nick another cut across my chest. But months later, 6, 7, nearly 8, I was moving forward so fast the days blurred. I wasn't the man who walked out of that house with a duffel bag and a shattered heart. Not anymore. I found a new job not long after my quiet war ended. An old client at the shop put in a good word for me at a performance auto garage across town. Better pay, bigger projects. The kind of place I could lose myself in gears and grease and horsepower. Work had become therapy. Each rebuilt engine, each perfect tune-up was a small victory. A tangible reminder that I could create, not just tear down. And I'd built myself in other ways, too. Mornings at the gym, evening jogs through the park, books on discipline and boundaries stacked on my nightstand. I devoured them all. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was chasing peace. Matt stayed in my corner through it all. One Saturday afternoon, we sat on his porch after a long ride, two Harleys side by side, the engines ticking softly as they cooled. Man, I swear, he said, cracking open a beer. I don't even recognize you anymore. I grinned. Good. I don't want to recognize that old guy either. He leaned back, nodding. You've done the work, Jake. More than most would. Hell, more than I thought you could when you first showed up. I had to, I said quietly. I wasn't about to let them write my ending. Matt raised his beer. To new chapters. We clinked bottles. And for once, the toast didn't taste bitter. And then there was her. It wasn't something I'd planned. Hell, after what I'd been through, I wasn't even looking. But life has a funny way of surprising you when you stop chasing ghosts. Her name was Diana. I met her at the garage. She'd brought in an old '68 Mustang, cherry red but rough under the hood. She was different. No games. No masks. Just sharp eyes, a quick laugh, and more patience than most. It started simple, talking about cars, a shared love of old rock records. Coffee runs turned into late-night conversations in the shop when my shift ended. I kept my guard up at first, walls built high and thick. But she never pushed, never pried. One night, as we sat on a bench outside the garage, sipping black coffee under a silver moon, she looked at me and said softly, "You've been through hell, haven't you?" I didn't answer right away, just stared out into the dark. Finally, I said, "Yeah," but I walked out the other side. She nodded, smiling gently. That's all that matters. And just like that, a door inside me cracked open, slow, cautious but real. I didn't speak to my family again. After that last meeting in the diner, I'd blocked every number, deleted every old message. Matt told me he'd heard through the grapevine that Dad was still trying to patch up Nick's mess. That Amber had bounced between friends, burned bridges, and was living in a tiny apartment on the edge of town. I felt nothing. No joy in their suffering. No lingering bitterness. Just indifference. They were ghosts now, and ghosts didn't deserve space in the life I was building. One night, months later, I found myself alone in my apartment, sitting by the window as rain streaked the glass. The city lights below shimmered in the wet night. I thought back on it all, the betrayal, the pain, the nights I thought I wouldn't get through. And then I looked around me, my place, my life, my peace. I thought of Diana, of Matt, of every small victory that had led me here. I wasn't defined by what they did to me. Not anymore. I was defined by what I'd done since. There's a funny kind of freedom in losing everything. You learn what really matters, what you'll fight for, what you'll never tolerate again. I had boundaries now, steel-forged and unshakable. I knew my worth. And more importantly, I knew I'd never give anyone the power to take it away again. Diana texted me that night as I sat by the window. Rainy night. Coffee. I smiled. Absolutely, I replied. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, steps sure and steady. As I locked up behind me, a thought drifted through my mind, clear, final, and true. Sometimes you lose everything to finally find yourself.